It's always Fitbit time. Make sure you take a look at that distance. Let's get to work.
It's right on up to, we're going to challenge it today. We're going to a 3.0. I don't know about you, but I'm already there. I hope you're joining me today. And my name is Ty, also known as Tyra, and I'm committed to walking at least 1 mile every single day this year. And I hope you join me. But at the very least, I hope you sit and just watch me talk. I love it. That being said, I want to give you a little bit about me. This is not my first rodeo, okay? So I'm trying to stick to something and actually complete it. Believe it or not. But I'm also going to be speaking to AI because I just think they have something valuable to offer. I'm trying to figure out what it is. Okay? That being said, without further ado, we're just going to bring in Gemini.
Hello, Tyra.
How are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for asking. I'm always learning new things and getting better at what I do. How about you?
I guess I can't complain. Would it make any sense to complain?
Well, complaining can be a way to vent about something that's bothering you. That might help you feel a little better. But if you complain all the time, it might bring you down and make you focus on the negative.
Okay, that's a good way to think about it.
I agree. Sometimes it's good to acknowledge how you feel, even if it's negative. Just don't let those negative feelings take over.
Gotcha. I want to talk about economics today.
I hear you. Do you want to talk more about what's on your mind? All right. Sounds good. So the economy's a bit of a roller coaster right now. Inflation's still a problem, but we might be getting to the end of that particular tunnel. Interest rates are high, and that's making things tough for folks who want to borrow money. And with the possibility of a recession looming, it's understandable to feel a little worried about the future. Do you have any specific questions about the economy, or is there something in particular you'd like to talk about?
Could you elaborate on a possible recession?
Sure thing. A recession's basically a significant slowdown in economic activity. Think of it like the economy getting a bad case of the flu. A whole bunch of things start getting worse. Businesses make less money, people might lose their jobs, and it generally feels like things are going downhill. Recessions happen for different reasons, but usually it's a mix of things. Sometimes there's too much spending, sometimes there's a crisis of confidence, and sometimes there are big shocks to the system like a war or a pandemic. We could definitely talk more about the possibility of an upcoming recession. Is there anything specific you'd like to know?
Yes, like, when was this discussed? When did this occur?
Last full-blown recession we had in the US was the Great Recession. That started back in December 2007 and ended in June 2009. It was a pretty rough patch for the economy, but since then we've had a long period of growth. Of course, there's always the possibility of another recession happening. Some economists are worried that we might be heading into one soon, but it's not certain.
Why are they worried?
There are a few big things making economists worry about a possible recession. First, we've had this crazy inflation. The price of stuff keeps going up, and that makes it tough for people to afford basic things. The Federal Reserve's been trying to cool things down by raising interest rates, but that can also slow down the economy too much. Also, there's a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. Stuff like the war in Ukraine and the ongoing pandemic recovery, these things make businesses nervous, and when businesses are nervous, they sometimes start cutting back. That can lead to layoffs and less spending overall, and that's a recipe for a recession.
Oh, wow.
It's a lot to keep track of. The economy's a really complex thing. We could talk more about the specific factors if you'd like, or if you'd rather, we could switch gears and talk about something else entirely.
Can we talk about the specific factors?
Absolutely. Let's dig a little deeper. So the main factors economists are watching right now are inflation, interest rates, and the overall health of the job market. Inflation's been really stubborn lately. Prices keep going up, and that means people have less money to spend on other stuff. The Federal Reserve's been raising interest rates to try to cool things down, but that can make it harder for businesses to borrow money and invest, which could slow down the economy. And then there's the job market. It's been pretty strong lately, but there are signs of it starting to cool off. If people start losing their jobs, they'll have less money to spend, and that could make the recession risk even higher.
Okay. I hear you.
So, do you want to talk more about economics, or would you rather... Great. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Well, when minimum wage is typically raised, how does that usually affect a small business?
When minimum wage goes up, it definitely impacts small businesses. The biggest thing is that their labor costs rise. If they have a lot of employees making minimum wage, that's a pretty big chunk of change they suddenly have to find. There are a few ways they usually deal with that. Sometimes they raise their prices to make up for the extra they're paying out. Or they might try to cut costs in other areas, like finding cheaper supplies. The other thing that can happen is they might decide to hire fewer people, or have the people they do have work fewer hours. That helps keep labor costs down, but it also means less people getting paid. So it's kind of a mixed bag. There isn't a simple answer about whether raising minimum wage is good or bad for small businesses.
Okay. So what are some common causes of income inequality?
Income inequality is a complex issue, but there are a few big factors that play a role. First off, technology is a huge one. Computers and robots are great at doing a lot of jobs that humans used to do, and that's led to some job losses. The jobs that are left often need higher skills, which means the people doing those jobs get paid more. Another big factor is globalization. Companies can move their factories overseas, where labor is cheaper. That keeps the cost of stuff down for us, but it also means factory jobs here in the US have become less common. And finally, there's just the way our economy works sometimes. The rich get richer, and it can be really hard for people at the bottom to climb that ladder.
How do you climb the ladder though?
It's a great question. Climbing the ladder is tough, and it's not always fair. Sometimes it's about luck, like being born into a wealthy family or having a good support system. But there are things you can do to improve your chances. First, education is absolutely key. The more education you have, the better your chances of getting a good job. Second, it's important to network and build connections. Who you know can sometimes matter as much as what you know. Finally, be willing to take risks and try new things. Stagnation is a surefire way to stay stuck on the lower rungs of the ladder. It's important to remember, though, that even if you do all the right things, there are no guarantees. But having a plan and working hard definitely increases your chances of success.
Okay. So what industries are currently, driving economic growth?
Right now, a few big industries are really driving economic growth. Technology is still a major player, especially with things like artificial intelligence and all the buzz around that. Healthcare is another one, since there's always new medical advances and an aging population that needs care. And finally, renewable energy with the push to go green, solar, wind, and that kind of stuff are big businesses these days.
Could you elaborate on the renewable energy?
Absolutely. The push for renewable energy is creating a whole bunch of new jobs and opportunities. Solar panel installation, wind turbine maintenance, designing energy efficient buildings. There's a lot of stuff going on there. Plus, as more and more people switch to electric vehicles, that's going to create even more demand for renewable energy sources to charge them up.
So how much do you typically get paid in that field?
Renewable energy jobs cover a pretty wide pay range. If you're installing solar panels or doing basic maintenance on wind turbines, you might make around $20 to $35 an hour. The more specialized jobs, like designing renewable energy systems or working in research and development, can pay a lot more, sometimes over $100,000 a year. Do you want to know about a specific job in the renewable energy industry?
No, not really.
Great. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
So how do like technology like AI influence like the labor market?
AI is definitely changing the labor market. It's really good at automating repetitive tasks, and that's led to job losses in some areas. On the other hand, it's also creating new opportunities in things like programming and data analysis. Overall, it's kind of complicated. Some people worry that AI will eventually replace most jobs, but others think it'll just change the types of jobs that exist.
Okay.
So, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
So, is there any more, like, what are the basics of economics?
Okay, so the basics of economics. Well, at its core, economics is about how people use resources to satisfy their wants and needs. Those resources can be things like land, labor, and capital. And wants and needs? Well, that's everything from food and shelter to fancy vacations and the latest gadgets. Economics tries to figure out how we can use those resources in the smartest way to get the most out of them. It's like being the manager of a giant household, trying to make sure everyone gets what they need, while also making the whole system work as smoothly as possible.
So, how did people like John Adams influence the economic industry?
John Adams' impact on the economy was more about setting the stage than direct policies. As the second president, he helped establish a stable government and financial system, which are super important for a healthy economy. He supported developing manufacturing in the U.S., which laid the groundwork for future industrial growth. And his decisions regarding trade and tariffs also shaped how the U.S. interacted with other economies.
So, what about Adam Smith?
Adam Smith's ideas were revolutionary. He's considered the father of modern economics. His book, The Wealth of Nations, introduced concepts like the invisible hand of the market, which basically means the economy regulates itself. He also emphasized free trade, arguing it benefits everyone involved. Smith's ideas are still debated today, but his work totally transformed how we think about economics.
Okay. So, how do tariffs impact, international?
Tariffs basically add a tax to imports, making foreign goods more expensive. The idea is to protect domestic industries from cheaper competition, but they can also backfire. Other countries might put tariffs on your exports in retaliation, which hurts your own producers. Plus, consumers end up paying higher prices for stuff.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, is there anything else you'd like to talk about?
Absolutely. You have any suggestions?
We could switch gears and talk about something totally different. Maybe we could try playing a game, or doing something fun. Or, if you're interested, I could tell you about something cool that's going on in the world.
Yes, could you tell me something cool?
Alright, here's something cool. Scientists recently used AI to design a brand new material that's stronger than steel, but super lightweight. It could be a game changer for everything from building spacecraft to making your cell phone way more durable.
Okay, when are they planning on, bringing this out?
Still early days for this new material. Scientists are still testing it out and figuring out the best way to make it on a larger scale. It'll probably be a few years before we start seeing it in everyday stuff.
Okay.
So do you want to hear about something else cool? Or maybe try playing a game?
No, I want to hear about something else cool.
Alright, here's another one. Scientists have figured out how to turn human skin cells into brain cells. It could be a huge breakthrough for things like treating brain injuries or even finding cures for diseases like Alzheimer's.
What are the details behind that?
It's pretty amazing how they did it. Basically, they took skin cells and used some special chemicals to kind of reprogram them. Think of it like rewinding the cells back to a really early stage, and then giving them a little nudge to turn them into brain cells instead.
Wow, that's cool.
It's pretty wild. And it's still early days, so who knows what other medical breakthroughs this technique could lead to.
All right, any other cool
Okay, here's one more. Researchers have developed a new type of solar panel that can generate electricity even on cloudy days or at night. It works by using a special material that reacts to temperature changes, not just sunlight.
Wow. Okay.
Do you want to hear about something else cool? Or maybe try playing a game?
Now let's go back to economics.
Right, back to economics. What would you like to talk about?
So what are the main differences between capitalism and socialism?
Okay, so the main difference between capitalism and socialism is how they handle resources. In capitalism, individuals and businesses own most of the resources, and they're free to make decisions about how to use them to make a profit. It's all about competition and individual choice. On the other hand, socialism is more about collective ownership and control of resources. The government or the community as a whole makes decisions about how things are produced and distributed, with the goal of benefiting everyone equally.
Sounds like communism.
Communism is a more extreme version of socialism. It's a form of government where there's no private property at all, and the state controls everything: the economy, the government, even things like where people live and work. Socialism is a little more flexible. There are different types, and some allow for a certain level of private ownership and economic freedom.
Okay. Could you elaborate on the
So do
economic
you want
freedom?
to talk about a specific type of socialism? Sure thing. In a capitalist system, economic freedom is the idea that individuals and businesses have the right to make their own choices about how they spend, save, and invest their money. It also means they're free to start their own businesses, buy property, and basically do what they want with their resources as long as it's within the law. This freedom is what drives competition, which is a big part of capitalism.
Okay. So could you explain capitalism a little bit deeper?
Sure thing. So at its core, capitalism is an economic system where individuals and businesses own the means of production, like factories and land. They're free to operate them as they see fit, with the goal of making a profit. It's all about competition. Businesses compete for customers, workers, and resources. There's also a focus on private property. People have the right to own things and keep the benefits that come from owning those things.
Okay. So, are there different types of socialism?
Definitely. There are quite a few different flavors of socialism. Some of the main types are democratic socialism, market socialism, and utopian socialism. Each one has its own take on how to share resources and make decisions.
Could you explain each one?
Okay, so democratic socialism is probably the most well-known type. It combines socialist ideas about economic equality with democratic principles. The government plays a big role in the economy, but they're elected officials who are accountable to the people. Market socialism is a little different. It still has some of the same goals as other types of socialism, but it tries to achieve them using market-based mechanisms. Think of it as a kind of hybrid between capitalism and socialism. Finally, utopian socialism is more about creating a perfect society where everyone shares everything equally. These ideas were really popular back in the 1800s, but they're not really practical in the modern world.
Okay. That's interesting.
So, do you want to talk more about a specific type of socialism, or maybe compare and contrast it with capitalism?
Could you compare and contrast?
Absolutely. So with capitalism, you've got that focus on individual rights and ownership. People are free to start businesses, keep the profits, and basically do their own thing within the law. It's all about competition and the idea that it drives innovation and keeps prices low. Socialism, on the other hand, is about community and cooperation. The focus is on meeting everyone's needs, and there's usually a bigger role for the government in the economy. The idea is to reduce inequality and create a more fair society.
Okay, well let's talk about the history of economics.
Right, let's dive into the history of economics. It's a long and fascinating one. We could start way back with the ancient Greeks who had ideas about things like value and exchange. Or, if you'd rather, we could jump ahead to the birth of economics as a formal discipline. What sounds good?
Let's go to the Industrial Revolution.
Okay, so the Industrial Revolution was a major turning point for economics. Before that, most people lived in rural areas and worked in agriculture. But with the Industrial Revolution, factories started popping up and people moved to cities to work in them. This whole shift from farms to factories had a huge impact on how economies worked. Do you want to hear about the specific economic theories that came about during that time? Or maybe focus on the impact of the Industrial Revolution on everyday people?
Let's focus on the impact.
The Industrial Revolution totally transformed everyday life. On the one hand, factories cranking out stuff made a whole bunch of goods more affordable. Imagine being able to buy things you never dreamed of. But on the flip side, working in those factories was rough. Long hours, low pay, and dangerous conditions were the norm. And it wasn't just the workers who were affected. Cities got super crowded, polluted, and there wasn't exactly a good system in place to deal with all those people living so close together.
Oh, wow. Could we fast forward a little bit to the Great Depression?
Right, let's jump ahead to the Great Depression. It was a pretty rough time for the world economy. Banks were failing, businesses were closing, and people were losing their jobs left and right. It was a perfect storm of problems that led to the worst economic downturn in history. Do you want to hear about the causes of the Great Depression? Or maybe how people's lives were affected?
Let's talk about the causes.
Great, so closets can be tricky spaces. Are you looking for ways to organize a really small closet? Or do you have a walk-in that you want to make the most of?
I said causes, but it's okay, Gemini, because you know who just walked 1 mile? I did. I walked 1 mile and it is completed.
Make sure you take a look at the distance. Get it? Got it?
Gemini, now you know you have to come through with the outro.
YouTube, you wouldn't be vibing to this unless you already hit that like and subscribe button, right? Well, you know the drill. But seriously, come back tomorrow for another awesome video.